there is not that much difference between a scientist and a craftsman, in the sense that just like a craftsman is an apprentice and he learns to do certain things, there is like this way of making fixing, plumbing, and you have certain techniques that you learn, and then you go through the motions, and you have slightly different situation that you face, but then you always apply the same script, follow the same script basically. And I think it's basically the same for scientists. And because of the way they're trained, because they're trained like this, they're trained basically like plumbers. No offense to plumbers, this. In the case of plumbers, there's nothing wrong with this. In the case of scientists, I think it's more problematic. But basically, they are trained this way. They're trained to follow a script. And so they're going to take different questions and they're going to follow the same script mechanically. I think that more often than not, they don't really think about those things. They don't think about how much those semi-arbitrary assumptions are in fact semi-arbitrary, and how sensitive to those assumptions their conclusions are. Because, again, they weren't trained like this, and as you were saying, they have no incentives to do this. Like the incentives is to not do this. But I'm just saying it's not just about the incentives. It's also that, again, we greatly exaggerate, in my opinion, the difference between craftsmen and scientists are just craftsmen of sorts, and this that's part of the explanation for this kind of problems.
Yeah, I think the plumber comparison, I think, is unfair to plumbers and craftsmen. I mean, if you're a plumber, you have to, right? If you have a technique of unclogging pipes and it doesn't work, you're going to find out pretty quickly. If you're a scientist, or if you're an academic publishing papers and you're churning out result after result after result, and none of them are true, you have no feedback on that unless somebody
but that's just because my point. I agree with this. I'm not saying they're similar in all respects. I'm saying they're similar. They're very similar, much more than people realize. In this respect, that they learn a certain set of techniques. They learn to follow a certain limited number of scripts, and then in their career they just follow these scripts, pretty mechanically, and that's how they churn out papers, and this is how you get successful academics. I'm not saying, of course, I'm not saying they're, and I agree it's unfair, with plumbers. Although you could say that at least the plumbers is lucky enough that he's gonna get the feedback. He's gonna, if his fix doesn't work, he's gonna know it pretty soon, and he'll have to fix it. I guess in a way, you could defend scientists and say, well, they don't know this, so they don't even. Perhaps the plumber would mess things up just as much if they didn't have this feedback. But of course, it's kind of like it's difficult to even imagine what it would be like for a plumber not to have the feedback. But my point is, again, not that they're similar in all respects, of course, or in particular, I agree they're not similar in this respect that you were talking about. But my point is they're similar, at least in this respect, that their training is basically learning a certain number of scripts, and then for the rest of their career, they're going to mostly follow those scripts, and that's how you get to be a successful academic. And the problem is that following those scripts isn't conducive to finding true stuff, or at least stuff that we can be confident is true.
Yeah, you're saying, what would a plumber, be like without feedback? I imagine, I don't know if you ever, you call a plumber sometimes, and they try to explain to you the problem, that you're having. And it would be sort of like, if they were like academics, it would be sort of like, he just listen to you on the phone about the problem. And then the plumber said, do X, Y, and Z, right? Without ever looking or touching, wherever you're having the problem. And then not even being told after you're done whether he was right or wrong, right? He just gives you the advice and he hangs up the phone.
It's as if, your house instantly disappeared immediately after you've dealt with the plumber. So, you'll never have any way of knowing if it actually worked.